Hi, and welcome to the latest video by the Ashford Gaming Club, looking this time at Nemesis, the board game. The board game that is basically Alien, the board game, or Dead Space, if you were a fan of those computer games, etc., but stays just the correct side of copyright law in order not to get sued. I can understand immediately, I can hear the voices now. Michael, why are you looking at a game that's been out for quite a while now? There's a very simple reason for that. I couldn't get it. Until recently. The main reason seems to have been that the producers of this game did not produce enough of it. We'll assume they didn't realise how popular it was going to be, and very shortly after its release, suddenly you couldn't get it for love nor money. I certainly couldn't get it when I was considering it a couple of years ago. The only way I've now got it is because the producers of this game have done a Kickstarter campaign for another follow-up to this, called Nemesis Lockdown. And as part of that Kickstarter campaign, you could also order the original box. It looks like a lot of retailers have also backed this Kickstarter campaign in order to get their hands on Nemesis when they couldn't get it. As a result, it's now started to appear on a lot of online retailers and in local game shops such as my local game shop. And so this review is mainly aimed at all those people who wanted to get it and couldn't, and are now suddenly finding it's now starting to get out. So yes, it has been out for a little while, but we're reviewing it now because I couldn't get it earlier. So, yeah, c'est la vie. So we're going to start this one with price for a change. Unusual, yes, but I'm going to start with pricing. Okay, so price. It's a big one. The reason why I'm leading with pricing for a change instead of leaving that towards the end, which is what I would normally do, is because this weighs in at 120 quid roughly, give or take. That is not a small outlay by anybody's standard. Well, unless you're Abramovich or somebody like that. It's a serious outlay in cash. To put that in perspective, that puts it on the same par as Twilight Imperium, a game renowned for its size and cost. Massively is larger than any other cooperative game. I know, for example, the market leader, which is Zombicide, for example, that weighs in at £80 or £90 retail for their starter sets. So we're talking still 50% more again, roughly. I recently did a video reviewing Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the Core, which is again another survival cooperative game. And that one starts off at £50, although granted that's kind of the light, version of it. To get the full game you have to buy various other bits and pieces to get the full film story, and that still comes in at £125 for all of the bits and pieces. Again, on the same level. However, as part of that review, I admitted that the big reason that is priced so expensive for all the bits and pieces is because they have to pay money to 20th Century Fox. These guys, Rebel, Awakened Realms, etc., don't have to pay 20th Century Fox. So why is it so expensive when they have no third-party license agreement involved? Well, part of it is it weighs a ton. Or to be more precise, on my kitchen scales, 5 kilograms, over half a stone. Trust me, I'd like to lose over a half a stone myself, but this is not a light box. There is a lot of stuff in here. We'll get there eventually. Apart from the board and everything, there is a huge amount of stuff. We got cards, we got models, we got boards, we got counters galore. Right? There is no shortage of bits and pieces in here. You certainly get your money's worth in sheer plastic and card, etc. They haven't skimped on any of that. I'll give them that for nothing. Right? But it is still an expensive outlay. in comparison to a lot of other games out there. So next we're going to look at aesthetics. There is nothing more I can say really other than, oh my god, they're beautiful. The models here are, there's the Queen, there's not much, because that painted up would be beautiful. I won't be painting one because, life is too short. But, although I am seriously tempted, no, be good boy. Right down to even the individual player characters. There's a scientist in a wheelchair. I love him. It's just great, right? The models are beautiful and would really support a really good paint job. There's no two ways about that. And there are quite a few of them. I mean, the game comes with 6 characters, about 8 basic adult aliens, another several creepers, a batch of lava, about 2 or 3 breeders, and the Queen. Right, you're not short on models, and they are all of this standard. There's no two ways about that. The artwork, again, is beautiful. I mean, there's just one. There's just a character board. Right, that's, I believe, is the Scout. Yeah, that's the Scout. Right. Each one the same. All the art on the cards is again up to all that standard. Our rule book has got all the references throughout it. There's a quick reference thing there. It's all really nice big print, which is really good for a dyslexic like me, because it means I can take my time and reread easily and not be having to read the small fine print. Another good thing is right at the very beginning it says, don't want to read the rules? Watch the video, and they have an official YouTube video for how to learn the rules, which I actually found really quite useful actually. I basically just sat down with a cup of tea and put it on the TV and watched it a couple of times, pause, rewind, sorry, say that bit again, got that, and it has actually worked. It really has been quite useful. Look wise, the aesthetics are to die for, end of story on that one. The style, it's a bit hard to pin down really. It's obviously heavily influenced by Alien, which everybody else has equated it to. That is true. I mean, if that is not a copy of an Alien, I do not know what is. I mean, it's even got the domed head without any eyes. It's just got a shorter head. If that's not the Queen, I don't know what is. However, the style has gone a bit more towards, say, Dead Space. So if you were to take Alien and Dead Space and combine the two, that's kind of the style that they seem to have gone down. If that's all your thing, that's great. I think it's adorable. I love the style of it, and I can really see myself losing myself in a few of these games. Just in the aesthetics of it, it's beautiful. Is it worth 120 quid? Only you can answer that, really. But that is as it is. Next pot, we'll be looking to the gameplay. So, gameplay. This is not going to be simple, and I will not be going through a full list of how you play the game, just giving you the barest of bones. If you're looking for a fast, simple, slick system, you're going to be seriously disappointed. This is a brain hurter, I must admit. Well, it's a brain hurter by my standards. Whether that's your standards or not is another matter. But basically, the core system runs around the deck of cards. Every character has a deck of 10 cards, which are specific only to that character. So the captain will have his own deck of 10 cards. The scout will have her deck of own 10 cards, etc., etc., right? And you start off with them all there ready next to your character board. And when it comes to your turn, at the beginning of the turn, you draw 5 cards. 3, 4, 5. Right? This forms your hand. Now, from that point on, each person then gets to do 2 actions before then play passes to the next character and then the next, and so on and so forth. Right? Each action will require you to use up a number of these cards. Now, actions can come in 4 different forms. They can either be basic actions, as listed on your character board. These are actions that anybody can do. Right? So they'll be basically things like move, shoot, make a melee attack, etc., pick up an item, and so on and so forth. Then there are room-only actions. These are actions that can only be done in certain rooms. So, for example, you can only check the navigomputer to see where the ship is heading if you're in the bridge. You can only check for removing a parasite if you're in the emergency room, and so on and so forth. And then there are item actions, we'll go with them next, which are actions based on a particular item. So if you've got a medikit, it will say, for an action, you can use this up to heal a specific wound, etc. and so forth. And then there are card actions, because not only do you use these to form actions, but they have actions themselves. So, for example, suppressive fire, rest, etc. They all of these are actions that can be done. Another good example, there's a whole spread of them, right? And some of these actions will be the same for every character. For example, every character will have in their deck basic search actions. Most characters, I've noticed both the scout and the captain already have suppressive fire, which is, like blaze away to try and get out of trouble. But I suspect not all of them will have that. But there will be quite a few that are specific only to a specific character. Like, for example, the captain can order somebody to do something, do a specific action that they can't resist. They have to do it due to inhibitor chips in their brain. A bit like clone troopers during the Star Wars Clone Wars, perhaps. I invert Order 66. Right. So once you've chosen what action to do, every action has a number by it for the amount of cards that have to be used up to do this. So let's just say again, right? Get me hand of 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is my unused pile. Right, let's say I wanted to move from one room to another. According to this, it cost me one card to do it. So I literally discard a card that I don't want to use specifically to do that action. I could do it again, provided I don't run into a big, nasty, ugly gribbly, and go, I'll spend another card to do that, to move from another room and so forth. So that's my 2 actions done. It goes then to the next person. And they do 2 actions, and it goes all the way around until it comes back in. Now, at some point, some of these people may have decided they don't want to do anything and simply pass. Right? But once it comes back to the first player again, your turn hasn't ended. Anybody who still has unused cards can still do more actions, so you simply go round again. Everybody who has not passed gets an opportunity to do another 2 actions, and so forth. You keep going until everybody has been forced to pass, either because they voluntarily say, no, I don't want to do any more, or they've literally spent all their cards and have got nothing left and have to pass. At that point, it then moves to effectively the alien phase. It's called the event phase, but it's used for tidying things up, activating alien attacks, and so on and so forth. So you can run around, go, spend all 5 cards, 2, 3, 4, 5 running, all the way halfway across the ship, if you really want to. The problem with that is, if an alien does turn up, there's 2 things. You draw a token from a bag, and in that token will be, on one side, the type of alien it is, and on the other side, how threatening, a warning level. Now, if you have less cards in your hand than the warning level, you've been surprised and the alien attacks you first. However, if you still get, so if the warning level was 3 and I only had 2 cards left in my hand, I would be surprised and attacked before I knew the alien was there. However, if I had 3 or more cards still in my hand when the alien turned up, I would not be surprised. The alien does not get a surprise attack. I then get to still have a turn before the alien does anything. So moving more cautiously around the ship, not spending all 5 of your cards and still having some spare cards to hand, is definitely a tactic you might want to employ, because if you go running all around here and you spend your last card moving into the last room and a little lava turns up, it's going to get a surprise attack at you and you're going to be infected with a lava in your guts. It's not good at all. The other thing is, you can get what's called contamination cards. On the one side, contamination cards look exactly like ordinary action cards. However, on the other side, they have this kind of red mess. Now, what these do is, if you get told that you've been potentially contaminated, you have to put one of these on your discard pile. So you've got your little discard pile, you put it down. At some point, that's going to end up getting shuffled into your hand of cards. And when you do your shuffling, and you draw your 5 cards up again, and oh look, one of mine's contaminated. The first thing is, you cannot use this card at all. You can't, it's got no action on it, so you can't use it as an action, and you cannot discard contamination cards to pay for other actions. This has to stay now in your hand. Unless the only way of getting out of your hand back into your discard pile is to pass your turn and therefore discard everything from your hand. It effectively clogs up your hand and reducing the amount of options you have available to you. The second thing is, at some point, you may be required to scan yourself. It's a scanner. Now, the scanner, do you remember when we was kids, back in the 80s, you had these special secret message things sometimes, which was basically some blue writing hidden by a load of red squiggly lines, etc. And you can only read the blue writing if you put a bit of red plastic over the top, which, blanked out all the red, and you could then only see the blue writing. Well, that's the same here. You have to slide this card behind the red scanner. Now, I don't know if my camera's good enough for that to pick that up. Probably not. But the upshot is, it'll have a number of lines here saying, various words. Some of them are, most of them are complete gobbledygook. However, if one of these 5 words actually says infected, this doesn't. But if it does say infected, you have actually been infected with some form of lava. Potential to die. You burst out and rip you apart. So, these you really want to find a way of getting shot of, because they will clog up your car. And if you end up with too many of them and end up scanning, you could end up having big mess all over the place, and you're dead. And that's basically the gist of the system. There's a lot more to it than that, I'll be honest with you. A lot more to it. There is so many more steps involved. I do recommend that if you end up getting this game, sit down at home with yourself and run through a solo game yourself before you introduce your mates. This is what I've ended up doing. I ended up doing a solo game myself just to make sure I understood how the game mechanics worked before I ended up taking it to my gaming club. I'm due to be doing that this week coming, and it's a good job because there is a lot of things that I didn't realise how it worked until where's the rule book? I get it now, right. So yes, I do recommend having a run through before you take it anywhere. The only other thing I'm going to talk about in the gameplay section is the objectives. And this is really the heart and soul of the game. I talked about the card mechanics was the core mechanics of the game, but this is the heart and soul. If you can call it a soul, because really it lends itself to being soulless barlam. Basically, every character gets dealt, right at the beginning of the game, 2 objective cards. One of these objectives is a nice, generally easy-going one. Make sure the ship gets back to Earth. Make sure that an emergency signal is sent before everybody escapes or whatever. This nice, for want of a better phrase, objective doesn't require it crossing swords with anybody else, as long as everybody else is playing nicely. Everybody else will not be playing nicely. If you're playing this game, it's because at heart, part of you wants to be a complete and utter bar lamb. Because the second objective is called the corporate objective. Everybody else knows it mostly as the backstab objective, and that will be something like: make sure player 1 does not get home alive. They know too much. Or make sure the ship is destroyed, and so forth. Now these objectives are all secret. You get your 2 objectives and you keep them secret. You don't choose which one you're going to try and achieve until the first alien appears. At which point, before you resolve the alien attack, before you know the result of it, everybody has to immediately choose to discard one of their 2 objectives and keep the other one. Now you may well choose the nasty one for very good and sensible reasons. For example, in a solo game I ran through, the first alien I came across happened to be the Queen, and she was in the engineering section. Oh my god. At which point, if I'd have been playing a multiplayer game and somebody else had one of their objectives was make sure Michael dies, they could quite have easily gone, he's found the Queen, and all he's got is a 6-shooter pistol. He's not going to make that out alive. I will choose to keep this objective and discard the nice one. For the simple fact is, the alien Queen is going to do the job for me, and I'll win. All I have to do now is make sure I live. Problem is, what happens if player 1 then does survive the Queen attack, gets away somehow? As it was in my solo game, I did. I managed to use suppressive fire, and I bolted out of there. At which point now, that other player has got to somehow engineer my death in order to win the game. It's possible for loads of different people to win, and it's possible for everybody to lose. The upshot is you've got to not only survive, but achieve your objectives. And you can't trust anybody. Sorry mate, you won't be able to trust anybody. There will be, even if the sensible thing is to choose the nice one, and everybody says, we're all going to work together, we're going to play the nice one, aren't we guys? There will be somebody who go, what if I screw with everybody? And, you could be going along swimmingly and then suddenly one of your team runs away. Where are you headed? We're all going back to the hibernation chamber. We've fixed the engines, we've sorted out the navigation computer, we're heading out of here. Why are you heading to an escape pod? Hang on a minute. Did anybody see where he set the navigation to? Or was he the one who went and checked the engines and said, yeah, they're fine, guys? At which point everybody starts to panic. It might be that he is not trying to stab you on the back. He just doesn't trust you lot and thinks one of you has sabotaged the engines or sabotaged the navigacomputer and doesn't trust you, and then is running for the escape pod anyway. At which point suddenly you're all distrusting him, but it's because he distrusts you. This is why it's called a semi-cooperative game. Yes, you have to work together, but really, at the end of the day, most of the time you're going to end up screwing each other over. Okay, next is lifespan. In lifespan we generally look at a couple of things. One, how often you're going to play it and so forth, and also how many different ways there are to play it, which is generally determined by the amount of expansions, etc. and so forth. At the moment, not counting the new Nemesis Lockdown, which is coming via Kickstarter, there is already quite a few expansions, etc. available for it. So, I've written down a list here. So, at the moment, you've got available, if you got the Nemesis. There are a couple of extra alien boxes, Void Seeders, and something unpronounceable. There's also Aftermath expansion, etc. In total, if you got all the stuff available at the moment, you would have available 3 different alien races. There are another 2 coming as part of the next expansion. The one in Lockdown, plus it was part of a Kickstarter, the 5th race, but I'm sure they'll be releasing that as a separate race box. Yeah, I'd be very, very surprised that it didn't. So effectively, even if you just played the original core game, you could swap out the different races, and have 5 different races. You could play it 5 different ways. Each alien race is completely different and has its own rules, right? When it comes to characters, the original game comes with 12 characters. No, sorry. The original game comes with 6 characters, however there are a total of 12 available. There are another 5 available in Aftermath, and there is an extra medic available, I do believe, yes, a medic, which makes it a total of 6. So you can chop and change the characters out and so forth, even if you're just playing the original scenario. There will be another 6 characters coming as part of Lockdown, taking you to a total of 18 characters in the long run. Scenarios. Effectively, you've got at the moment 2 different scenarios. You've got the main scenario on the Nemesis, as it's all going Pete-Tong and you're trying to escape, either get the ship back to Earth or escape an escape pod, etc, etc, etc. There will be there's a second one in Aftermath, which he's still on the ship, but effectively is like another small shuttle docks with it, and they're investigating. It is a different scenario, and it's set a very short time after the original game, assuming the ship didn't blow up. There will be obviously a 3rd scenario available in Lockdown, which I believe is set on Mars, actually. Campaigns. You've already got 2 campaign books. Now, if I've got them, they're somewhere else. But effectively, the campaign books they're again beautiful. They're done like a graphic novel, with a full graphic novel intro story and all that. And there are 2 at the moment, and they are called Nemesis Untold Stories and Nemesis Untold Stories Volume 2. So you have 2 short campaigns you can play as well at the moment. There is a 3rd one coming, Nemesis Untold Stories 3. Very original. So you'll have eventually 3 campaigns as well. There is a lot of different ways to play this. Almost too many different ways to play this. The reason why there's almost too many different ways to play this is not a weekly club game. As I've already told you, the rules are they made my brain hurt. So you will not be doing this every week at the club. You will need the right group of people as well. Let's face it, it's a horror game, and like in all good horror films, somebody dies early on. You have to have someone die early on in order for everybody else to realise what serious doodahs they're in. Now, if the wrong member of your gaming group dies early on, you know the kind of guy or girl who gets in a bit of a stroppy if things didn't go right early on, right? You want to be very careful about who plays this game. You will need people who can accept the fact that they might die in the first 20 minutes, in which case, they're the token guy in the red suit. You need guys in red suits to die. So you will not be able to do this every week. As a result, how often are you going to be able to experiment with 5 different alien races, 18 different characters, 3 different scenarios, and 3 different campaigns? It's going to take you a good couple of years to work through all of that. Trust me, it's not going to be a quick run through this. That being said, you are not going to run out of ideas. In truth, you're probably going to be quite happy playing the same original scenario and just playing with different characters each time, because you're only going to be playing this about once every 1 or 2 months, when the right people have got enough time off to play you at your, when you get the beers in, get the old pizza shop on speed dial, and just settle in for a good gaming session. You don't really need all that extras. However, I'm a completionist. I'm also a mug, so I got it all. And I know that there are completionist mugs out there who will get it all. So, challenge accepted. I will find a way of doing every single mission. One way or another. So, conclusion. What do we think? I wanted to have a moan about this game. I'll be honest with you. I wanted to have a moan at its cost. And I wanted to have a moan at the models. Let me explain. I have increasingly of the mind that too many games now have loads of beautiful models when they're not really necessary. And we end up spending extra money for stuff we don't really need. The theory goes a bit like this. If you have if you're playing a beautiful tabletop war game with 3D hills and woods and, beautifully modelled woodland glades, etc. and so forth, and that lovely little, fortress off to the side and everything, then you want beautiful 3D models to go with it. It would look odd if you ended up with cobble counters. So yes, that makes sense to have all these beautiful models. If you're playing a two-dimensional board game, and let's face it, this is a two-dimensional board game, right? Do you really need loads of beautiful models on a two-dimensional? Yeah, they don't. Do they really add anything? That was my theory. And in certain games, I still hold on to that theory that they're, having all these 3D models is a bit over the top. We don't need it. We end up spending money because it's the fashion to have all these beautiful models. However, in this case, I am going to eat my words. The reason I'm going to eat my words is because this is not just a game. This is a Lamborghini Countach. Yeah, bear with me, okay? Bear with me on this one. Right. Back in the 80s, when I was young, enough, okay, there was two things I started to realise were beautiful. One was girls, and the other one was certain types of car, including the Lamborghini Countach. Now, my dad did not have a Lamborghini Countach. My dad had a Ford Granada, which is what we needed. Yeah, if he had a Lamborghini Countach, it's not like we could take it down to he could use it to do the weekly shop at Sainsbury's or Tesco's, was it? No. I mean, the boot was the size of a postage stamp. You couldn't reverse in it because the rear window was literally the size of a letterbox, and even more useless than that because it was so high up. It was so impractical, you could not use this car for everyday stuff, right? But it was still sex on a stick as far as most teenage boys were concerned. It was beautiful, right? There were other, mad cars at the time, and not all of them were great. The DeLorean being such an example. It looked alright on paper until it turned up for its first press conference and the guy couldn't get out because all the locks broke. So all the press cameramen were all taking pictures and he's going, I can't open the door. It took the film Back to the Future before that actually got any credibility as a car, but it was still a terrible car. Yeah, the idea might have been alright. It was seriously poorly executed. Now, over the years, cars have become more... They've all been put through the wind tunnel, haven't they? So they've become better, they've become more fuel efficient, all the edges have been rounded off and everything, and they get more miles to the gallon, etc. They are, on paper, better cars. They work better, they are more practical, etc. But they've lost a bit of their character, haven't they? So many cars just look the same now. I still, back in the day when I was young, you looked at certain cars and you knew that was whatever. In this case, a Lamborghini Countach. They had soul. Cars in the 80s and earlier had soul. And unfortunately, the more we put cars through the wind tunnel, the more on paper they are better, but they lose a bit of they lose character. This game is that. Right. This is a super sports car. In a world where we've been putting more and more games through the streamlined wind tunnel, because that's effectively what board games have instead of a wind tunnel, they will say, it's been streamlined. Which makes them faster, it makes them more simplified, more easier to learn, less cloggy and cumbersome, etc. Things flow better. On paper, it all is good. Streamlining games is good, in general. However, every now and again, you start feeling they're all getting a bit the same sometimes. This is a game that was never put through a wind tunnel. This is a game where somebody just went, we're going to have every mad idea we can have, and we're going to find a way of getting it to work. And it could have easily have ended up as a DeLorean, a complete and utter failure. Because it's so complicated, so cumbersome, that you end up going, I'm just not going to bother. However, it is not a DeLorean, it is a Lamborghini. Yes, it is impractical. You are not going to play this every week. You might not even play this every month. This is an event you will need the right group of people. You will need quite a serious amount of time. Just book some time off work, get everybody together, right? As I say, get the pizza place on the speed dial, get the beers in, and just dive in and write the rest of the day off. In the same way that, every once in a while you take the Lamborghini to the Nürburgring. Because you wouldn't take it to the weekly shop, would you? So, yes, I wanted to moan at the cost of it. I wanted to moan at the model, the amount of counters and so forth. But there is, it's got heart, it's got a soul. Whoever's designed this, I love them. For example, if a committee had done this, you would not have had that little scanner thing, where you put the card in behind the red screen to see whether it's infected. You would have simply had a little track on your character board, and you'd simply just have a little counter saying how many times you've been potentially infected, contaminated. And, they would say simply something like, draw 5 cards minus the amount of contamination on your little track there, right? They would have cut out a lot of cards, would cut out a lot of record keeping and so forth. You then wouldn't have the scanner, and you would simply at the end of the game have a dice test. I don't know, say roll a d6 for every in contamination card, contamination counter on your track, and for each one that turns up a 1 or a 2, you're infected. That's what a committee would have done. It would have streamlined it down, chucked out a whole load of cards, chucked out the scanner, and had it on a far more simpler system. But I love the scanner. It's just the whole tension bit. Oh, clear. And everybody's going to go on. You got another one to check there. I'm infected. And everybody's watching to see as you're slowly putting the card in. A committee would not have designed that. Somebody who loves games designed that. And whoever designed this, I love them. So that's the end of my little review. Whether you agree or not, I hope it's of some help to you. Feel free to send comments so I know if I'm hitting the right buttons and so forth. If not, I'll see you next time. Bye.